This conference will now be recorded.
Hi everyone, so very warm welcome to the next
I
session on.
cannot hear your voice.
Hello. Right, I think can you just please try login again, because I think everyone can hear me out. Hello.
Correct. Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you.
Sure.
Yes.
So guys, a very warm welcome to the session on SAP Cloud Integration Suite. So let's just quickly look at what we have discussed in our last session, and from there only we'll just take it forward. But first things, really apologize for 15-minute delay. I think I have some kind of a personal important thing which I need to take care of it. That's why I've delayed the session. So let's just look at what we have seen in our last sessions. Let me just quickly go below and see. Okay, perfect. Okay, I think last week we discussed about few of the things as I remember. So we talked about router, we talked about your exception handling, we talked about some kind of advanced scenario. I think we just talked about like a routing. Then we have looked into Groovy script. We discussed how we can use Groovy script to log the payload. We discussed how actually we can use your Groovy script to read your header or your property. Okay, so we did try and play around with multiple things on the Groovy part. Then we'll just look at also again there is an ID available where you will be able to actually check the syntax for your CPI bit also. After that, we just looked into the component part of your SAP cloud integration architecture. I think, as you know, we are using Apache Camel framework as an integration framework for our cloud integration. So SAP has built on top of it. So I think we discussed on critical parts of it, because end of the day, you'll not be able to see how underlying things works, or we don't have any kind of flexibility to make a change on any of the part. We started our architecture with two important questions. What are the runtime component in charge of message processing? Okay. Then during the your operation of integration scenario. And the second one was which component are in action when messages are passed for SAP CPI. So first we try to understand here the virtual, what is a virtualized components here in our SAP CPI. I think this talks everything. Okay, so I think the simple question was here from the architecture perspective, how the integration framework relates to the virtual machine, because end of the day we are creating in an ID in a graphical manner all our different kind of integration flows, how this will actually get executed on the VM part. So here I've explained you on the left part how a customer will have a global account where he'll have a tenant, and tenant will have two specific runtime nodes. One is a tenant management node, second is a runtime node. Okay, so tenant management node, as you remember, it's more kind of an operation one who take care of the operation part of overall tenant, and the runtime node is actually responsible for executing the messages. Okay, so this is the difference between your TMN and your runtime node. On the right side, now what happens is, now how does your graphical notation of your integration flow gets converted into the lower layer so that it gets executed to the runtime node? So thanks to the Apache Camel framework. So now whatever the graphical we put it, once we deploy, so what will happen is it will get converted by the framework into Camel XML and then into a Camel context, which will actually get executed at the runtime node. When I say the word camel context, so what does I mean here is that whatever the sequence of integration flow, how it should get executed when a message hits into the CPI. So that's I mean a camel context. So let me just quickly open the system here. Okay, so let me just step into a package which is ZX package for custom integration flows. Let me just go to the artifact part. Let me just quickly click on edit. Let me just go somewhere here in this particular artifact. Okay, so now this continuous line, what we see here. Okay, so this is the camel sequence which gets generated and which get actually executed. So this is, I was just talking about the overall framework. Again, I think initially there are a few other things which are important. Now one more part here. I'll just talk about this two pieces I was going to talk about, but first this one. So I think this is how the overall your request look like. Now let's say if someone sends a request to your CPI, so there is a load balancer where all your loads, where all your request gets terminated, and from here it's going to send a request to the TMN node. Okay, so TMN stands for tenant management node, and it passes request to runtime node, which actually executes the message. So here below, it just for the representation I've shown here, how come once a message finally get executed, it writes into some kind of monitoring data store from where this node will be able to read and show us into the monitoring tab. Okay, so this is one of the diagram I have shown or discussed last time. After that, as there are different kind of uh, notations you see. When I say the word notation, I mean that now let's say if you're using a SOAP adapter and when you just save your iFlow or deploy it, I'm speaking at the sender side, what happens is in your endpoint also CXF gets generated. I think initially it was very curious to everyone. I think when initially people start integration with your SAP S4 or ERP, because while creating your destination from SM15, what happens is we need to provide with this prefix CXF, and everyone was thinking why we need to give this kind of a prefix. I think the only reason is how this Apache Camel framework has been developed with other frameworks. Okay, so due to which it use some kind of a notation here. So same way, because CXF is one part, which is Apache Celtics file. Again, we have this bundle OSGI bundles here. Then we quickly jump into the next topic. We discuss that how. Okay, so now after that, what topic we pick was we discussed about your local integration process and your looping process call. So I hope you remember. Let me just quickly go back to our screens. So now let's say we have this kind of iFlow. Okay, one all activity which we are doing in one integration process. What happens is sometimes it becomes very overwhelming with multiple different components, and it's difficult to might be manage it out also. Okay, because it can actually go more bigger in size. So what SAP says that yeah, we do have a way for this particular bit also, which is your local integration process. Okay, so first of all, where do we have this option of a local integration process? Okay, so if you look at here in process, we have something called local integration process. So now let's say in case if you want to modularize your iFlow, when I say the word modularize, now let's say in case if you want to decompose, now let's say in case if we used to write some kind of function modules. Okay, so we used to write libraries so that, or let's say if you just talk about a function module. So now let's say in case we want to split our functionality, okay, so that we can have a good control in case if we want to anytime if we want to make a change, it's easy for us because we have to just focus on that particular piece. So now the same way, so now let's say if your functionality get little extended, what you can do is you can actually put a local integration process, and you can actually build whatever you want. Okay, the only thing is that definitely you need to have a connectivity with the main integration process. So we saw two things here. First, from where you can get a local integration process, that's the first thing. Second thing, I talked about how easy is to connect main integration process with your local integration process. So if you look at here in an external call, uh, sorry, so we have in calls, we have two things, external and local. As this is within an iFlow only, okay, so we have this local call. So here we have talked about three kind of calls we have it. So first is the process where it says add a process called steps to execute steps defined under the local integration process code. Looping will actually execute repetitively that local integration process based on a condition. I think this one is a new one, idempotent, which is add process call step to check for duplicate IDs and conditionally execute define in a local integration process. As I mentioned to you, I think this functionality has come recently. When I say recently, I'm expecting like within last 3-4 weeks only. So when you choose a process call, you can just quickly put it out here, and then we'll be able to connect to this particular local integration process. Second important thing what I've discussed is always whenever you're using a new capabilities, always it's a good option to go into help and look at what are the different kind of things it support and it does not support. That's very important thing, because that are the question which interviewer look for, where is if he has really done it or not. So always come here, look at the main part and just see, because it says very clearly you cannot use the following integration flow steps within the local integration step. Another local integration process, end message sender and your receiver. So this cannot be possible here. Now I think this is what we discussed, and I think the last part we discussed on the looping process call. So now let's say if you want to execute any piece of block, okay, in a loop or multiple times based on a condition, then you can use a looping process call. Again, I think from a step perspective, I think it's easy. The reason is from where to actually take this up. Okay, so the process will remain the same, local integration process. The only thing which will change here is how we want to call this local integration process. So here you have to define the looping process call. That's it. Every symbol, whatever you see, if it has a different functionality, I can assure you there will be a different kind of a symbol. So now I think for looping or a normal, when I say looping or your process call, symbols remain the same. Only in case of your looping, you will have this kind of a sign added. Okay. So I hope this were the last few topics which we have discussed. So it gives you clarity. Now let's in case if we have some kind of a list, and might be based on list you want to execute, might be you're splitting the records and then you're executing it out, then you have a fair idea, okay, that there are different ways to do that particular part. So this is what we have discussed in our last session. I think I have received multiple questions also on few of the specs. I'll just do one thing. Whatever the topic I do have planned for today, I'll just try to cover it out. So before going further, anyone has any kind of a question? Anyone? Okay, perfect. So guys, just now going into the next part of the integration. I think one quick thing was that Sam, we are using multiple times only the SOAP. Can we not use any other way to simulate it, guys? Yes, we are going to use to simulate it out. Okay, so we can even use the Postman. Okay, or I think the next time, whenever we have done with integration of web service and OData part, we are going to use a real-time service cloud system also. Okay, where you will be able to actually integrate with this particular system. So again, I think in the coming session, might be next to next week, you will be able to see that particular part. So this definitely we do have Planet. Now one simple question when we are connecting with your Postman. Again, guys, Postman is very similar to your SOAP. Okay, SOAP is most when we are talking about SOAP UI tool. SOAP UI tool is mostly used for SOAP request, and your Postman I can use for mostly your REST, for your HTTPS based request. Again, I think someone asked me what is the difference between SAM, SOAP, and REST. So yes, I'm going to talk about this particular part also when we start basics of web service. But just to give you a quick gist, whenever I think this is the most important difference between a SOAP and a REST as such. Okay. So now in case if you just look at any kind of a real-time request for SOAP, okay. So when I use the word SOAP, so just remember that SOAP is action code based. When I say the word action code based, what do I mean by that particular part? So when I say the action code 01, 02, 03, 04, so it means create, update, delete. Okay. So your SOAP is action based, where you have to pass a specific type code where it will tell what is the operation it's going to perform it out. So that is SOAP. When you're going to use the word REST, so it means that in your request, we pass this kind of HTTP verbose, like which get, post, put, patch, delete. Again, I think REST-based services are definitely taking attraction. If you see, there are like 74% market which is comprised of REST, which includes your which includes your different companies like Microsoft, Facebook. I think they have given a traction. Now, similar with your OData. OData again is a part of the REST-based framework here. So that's just your REST-based service. So now let's say anytime, guys, in case if someone wants to send a request using a Postman, so that can be also done. I think that's again very straightforward. Someone again, let me just show you quickly so that anytime if you want to send a request, it will be little easy. So now when I'm just talking about REST-based services, I think you have to use HTTPS. Oh, here you are going to use HTTP adapter type. You can use HTTPS. Okay. Again, I think it's very simple. You don't have to worry about anything here. Again, you just have to look at what are the different kind of configuration we have it. So first, it's very important if you're using adapter for the first time. Guys, again, never go in hurry, just look at few properties, just understand, okay, what is direction, adapter type, protocol type, message type, connection, and then your conditions part here. Just look at all the information. And again, the beauty of it is every time I just click on the help pages, because guys, this gives you the more kind of a granular level of information. Okay, it's like, okay, someone is giving you very specific about that particular topic, so that's a good part of it here. So again, once we are using more HTTP based requests, I'll be just talking about how this camel string get generated. Okay, and then we do have few things important onto your adapter side also, because there are important part of your uh, authorization. Okay, so how do you actually authenticate also? So now here again, it's very straightforward. So now here you want to send a request. Let's say, okay, now let's say if this is the address, you're defining it out. Again, your role, if you want to use a client certificate base or if you want to have a user role, just remember that. Make sure that every time, initially also I have told you that your user should have this role ESB messaging dot send enterprise service bus, because that's how from outside, if you want to throw a request, if you want on CPI someone to hear you out and give the message to your integration flow, you have to make sure that this is selected. Again, I think CSRF, which is your cross-site request forgery. Again, I think it's some kind of a token, which first of all it will request based on the token, it's going to again make a request with a message payload. So yeah, I think a real-time scenario it makes sense. I currently I'll just do one thing. I'll just uncheck this part out. Again, here from content modifier, put a message. and that's it. Okay, and just deploy it as simple as that. Now it's just taking a request from your postman, nothing else. The only thing, the difference you will see here when I'm sending a request from the postman, what happens is the endpoint which get generated, instead of having a prefix with your CXF, this time it will be generated with HTTP. Okay, so if I just go here, let it deploy. Let me see in case if there are something extra is deployed, then I can just quickly undeploy them out also.
And we use Postman for both SOAP and REST APIs, or only for the REST APIs?
I think mostly used for your REST API only.
Oh, okay.
I think there should be some kind of option, because in case if SOAP can provide an option for REST based, then definitely this tool also provides. I
Yeah,
haven't.
no, the reason is the first example that we tested using SOAP UI. I tested the same using the Postman, and it worked.
Okay, so you in get you using your parser request,
Yeah, I used Post, not Guest.
guys.
Postman.
Again, okay.
Yeah,
I'll just talk about this method also. You're
yeah.
talking about this
Okay.
method, or you're talking about this tool?
Tool I'm talking about. Tool, Postman, and I used the method post, and I call the iFlow.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it worked.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Perfect. I think if someone is, that's okay, guys. I think for some it works, for some it does not work. I think we have to look, okay, where there is a gap. Yeah. Again, guys, in case if you have already worked on any kind of integration, or you might have an exposure, then I think it's easy to relate it out. Okay. But in case if you are for the first time, then yeah, I think it's just matter of time. Currently, I believe that part. Okay. So now let me just quickly go here. If you look at, so here, I think this is how my endpoints get generated. Let me just copy this particular bit. Let me click on trace enable. So if I just go ahead in the Postman, so now how again simple is to use the Postman. So once you deploy it, or once you install Postman, I think the only simple thing what you have to do is here into the URL, just give the URL where you want to actually hit it out. Then you define the operations, guys. Anytime if you're defining about the operation, okay, if it's a get, post, put, patch, delete. Let me just tell you one small thing here. Now, guys, whenever we are sending any kind of request, when we are saying that, okay, I've sent a get request, I have sent a post request, it should be here. So get logically means that I should be able to get the required information. Post is means that I should be able to create a record. Guys, but because being a developer, I have worked on this side too, also on the your S4 auditor side too, also for some time. Now, guys, I think it all depends that whenever you have this operations get put, get post, so you have to implement this operations. Okay, it's not that if it is get, then okay, it's going to give me the get, or so if it's suppose, then it's going to create a record. I think it's all about who has implemented a particular function module, because end of the day, when you have function module, it's how you have exposed it out. Now, let's say if you have exposed using an OData service, then I think you have there are classes like MPC and DPC, okay, which you have to implement it out. So this functionality, it's all depend how or how a developer on the backend side has how he has implemented. This is just a simple HTTP verbose, which tells logically it should do this, but it all depends how someone has implemented it out. One time, what happens with me, we was integrating it out with one SAP based application, and someone in get only has written something where it was trying to create a record also. Okay, so it more depends on how someone has implemented your function module. But yes, in logical case, yes, as per HTTP or REST based standard, get should be fetching, post should be creating, put patch for update, and then and for delete. So now let's in case, now here if I have uh, an iFlow deployed, so now let me give a body here. I can just take any body. Let me just take till this part. I can, so now again, if you come on to this Postman tool, first you have to provide the URL where you want to hit your message. Then we have different tabs: params, authorization, headers, body, pre-request scripts, test, settings. I think this is being used extensively for testing it out your services and APIs. So now let's say if I want to pass the payload, I have to go to the body. You can just choose raw. I think I don't have anything here structured, so I can just give my message details here. In if you want to pass any kind of specific headers, you can do that particular part. Then we have your parameters and authorizations. Now let's in case if I want to use any kind of authorization, I can use basic. So now I think I have already my credentials placed here. So what I need to do is I need to just click on send as such here. Okay. So once I do a send, I'm able to receive a record. So now let's say in case if I even just do a post here also, okay, then also it will work out, because it's just trying to tell you just HTTP verbose only, that's it, nothing else. Okay, so let me just open the trace, and you will be able to see the payload. So I think this is how it actually work out, and I think it's very straightforward. You can easily send a request from a Postman tool, but instead of SOAP, yeah, as it's a REST base, so yes, you have to use an HTTPS. Now, guys, one or two important thing here. Anytime if you have kind of a new requirement comes up, might be someone says, okay, I want to integrate with HubSpot, I should be integrated with ServiceNow, I should be integrating with this particular system. So I don't think so people actually get worried, okay, there is a no pre-packaged content, so what should be my next move? Or I should say very clearly, no, I don't know how does it integrate with the HubSpot. I think your first approach should be very straightforward, clear that, okay, how your system, HubSpot, is exposing that data, or how it can actually consume a data. Okay, or I think more basic questions to it also, that, okay, in what particular format it exposes. It is a XML, is it a JSON, or is it a CSV? Okay, so these two questions become very important. What data format it exposed it or consumed data, and the second part is how or what kind of fashion it it's it makes connectivity with other system, or I mean that what kind of adapters can be used for this kind of integration. Might be if it's REST, you can use HTTPS. If it's your SOAP, you can use as such a SOAP adapter. So I think that's two things. If you know, then I think it's easy to integrate it out. Then second case comes where you have systems where we have some kind of a file based. Okay, when I say file based or your SFTP location, again, that's a different approach altogether. But if I'm just talking about application to application, so these two parameters are important. So now whatever we are doing from SOAP, you can send a request from Postman, any kind of a message payload. Okay. So once we go after this basics, once this basic part is done, when we're trying to use any kind of real-time scenario, I can just try out both the requests, both from SOAP and Postman. And I think it will just work in the similar fashion, nothing else. So that's one thing. Now let me go on to the next part. Okay, so I think this was about how to connect with using your HTTPS adapter. Now I think for today we have one more topic which is related to adapter only. I think which is related to your mail adapter. Okay. Okay, so now when I'm just talking about the mail adapter, so last time I think we were discussing the scenario of exception handling. Okay, when we're discussing about exception handling. So now let's say if there is any kind of exception which occurs in our iFlow, so it will actually navigate to the exception handling block. Okay, and there we talked about that we can, let me just quickly go to the iFlow. Okay, so now let me just go to that particular block, which is your, okay, which is, I think this is the same one which we're talking about, the exception handling. Does anyone remember about that, what we discussed in this part, exception handling?
Yeah,
Okay,
whenever we put exception, like in case of any error occurs, directly it will go and reach the exception block, and if at all any message we are throwing there, that will come as on receiver side.
perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, so this is what we discussed. So we discuss the same part. So now after the discussion, what we did was we put an exception sub process, and then we were happy it out. Okay, so we were passing the custom messages. But I think there was one thing which I've mentioned very specifically related to mail adapter. So now let's say if it goes into your exception sub block, what will happen is that there would be mostly in your CPI landscape, I think admin expect if there is an error, it should be triggered a mail to the admins as such. Okay, with your integration flow related detail. So I think the same thing we are going to discuss today. So now let's say in same, now I want to send a intimation using this mail adapter. Okay. So now how to proceed with that particular part? Again, I think using a mail adapter is easy. There is a no challenge here. But one important thing here is now SAP gives you one more additional thing, okay, which is your connectivity test. Let me, has anyone seen the option of connectivity test? Or anyone does remember where we have seen the option of connectivity test?
Yeah, it's in monitoring only. Right?
Sorry?
Underneath in the monitoring only.
Perfect. So now, guys, I think whenever we're just talking about integration or as we have a different adapters, so we really want that this different adapters of this integration platform, we might have to connect with the remote systems using different different kind of a technical protocols, technical communication protocols. So now let's say in this particular case, I want to connect to any kind of a mail server. So now let me just quickly go back here onto our integration. So let me just quickly go to the monitor tab. Okay. So if you look at in a managed security, okay, so now today we'll be discussing about this particular part also. So we have seen monitor message processing, manage integration, and we are today looking at manage security. So now let's say if we want to have or see the connectivity with different kind of remote systems, I can just quickly go on to this connectivity test. Okay. So now here you will see the list of different kind of integration we might have, and we if we want to see the connectivity with them is okay or not, or it's just like just checking out if I can really ping that particular server okay or not. Okay, so now let's say if we have on the connectivity part, we have different kind of application possible. Okay, so might be if you want to have, let's say if you want to connect or test your transport layer security, or your secure shell, or your simple mail transfer protocol, your IMAP, POP3, AMQP, Kafka, Cloud Connector. I think everything you will be able to provide the host details, and then you will be able to see if you can actually ping it correctly or not. Okay, so I think this functionality, yeah, might be you can just use some kind of external tool to connect the testivity, or SAP has given you something here for just validating your connectivity part. So now again, these options are getting added very quickly by SAP, because how much I remember last 1.5 year back, I think they just have till POP3 only. Okay. Uh, so after that, I think they have just now added for AMQP, which is your advanced message queuing protocol, Kafka, and your Cloud Connector. I think Cloud Connectors becomes critical because we in most of the cases, if you have to connect with the on-premise, I think Cloud Connector is one of the ways. So when we're just talking about uh, the connectivity here, so how does that particular connectivity works out? So now let's say in case if I want to connect using a simple mail transfer protocol, so I have to go to this particular tab, SMTP. So first of all, you need to provide the SMTP details. So again, I think it just talked about your SMTP server, and you have to have that details of it. So for, I think again, for different providers, this URL varies or host name varies. So let's say in case if you want to connect to your Yahoo's mail server, so for that it is smtp.mail.yahoo.com. In case if I'm talking about Microsoft Office, it is smtp.office365.com. Now let's say in my particular case, I'm going to use your Gmail IDs. Okay, so these are the two different Gmail IDs which I'm going to use it out. So for this particular bit, if I have to use or if I have to connect to the Gmail server, so what I need to do is I need to provide Gmail details, smtp.gmail.com. Okay, so this is the host we have for your Gmail. Now second part is your port. Again, I think we keep 587 only, from I think more from a security perspective. Then I think proxy type would be your internet only. I think when you see the option of on-premise, I think this is for different adapters. These are the options available. But for for our case, SMTP, you have to choose internet. Authentication currently you can just mark as none. I can just quickly send a request. Okay, and then it will say that okay, that it is able to successfully reach this particular host. Okay, which is your smtp.gmail.com.587. So here you have your server side certificates also available. So guys, again, I think the server side certificates are important. okay, and just to have your connection apart from your any kind of other authorization. So now what I'll do is for the timing, I'll just download this server certificate with me. It will just actually get downloaded to my machine. Now what happens is, now let me just go back again onto this monitoring tab. Now here we have different kind of tabs. Okay, so just remember that connectivity test is for connecting and checking with remote system if the connectivity stands good or not. Here we have security material I'm going to discuss about. Now next part is a key store. Key store is an important place where you actually store your certificates. Okay. So now let's say in case if you are looking for any kind of a standard certificate, SAP certificates, I think you will be able to get it here. Okay. So standard, if someone is looking for SAP certificate, okay, so this is this one, SAP Cloud Integration Certificate. So if you, this is a key pair. If you go inside, there are multiple certificate inside a key pair, DigiCert and all the things. Okay, so you just look at, so here we have this multiple certificates. But that was a one point which I want to tell you, that where your certificates are managed. Now, important thing is, if I'm just talking about, now let's say if I want to connect with smtp.gmail.com, there are like a common certificates. So there are two certificates which we need to make sure it is available. I think one is your GTS CA 101. I think this is till December 101. Let me just check. And there is one more for smtp.gmail.com. Okay, I think might be we need to replace it out. So here, if you just look at, we have your, this is till your Feb 21. So might be we need to import it out. So let's see if we need to import it, re-import or not. So now let's say, so now let me just do one thing. So I hope you have all seen the option. Okay, that what are the different kind of options which is available. So now let me go back to my iFlow. Let me just open a parallel tab here. Now let me go to the artifacts part here. Now let's just try to do the configuration for it, and now let's see how this particular part works out. So guys, still here any kind of a question, anyone? Anyone, anything? Any
Yeah,
point which is
sorry to ask this. The SMTP when you give in the connectivity test, so
okay?
you don't. Is it associated with a key store there, or otherwise it directly downloads
No,
when
no,
you
no,
do?
no, no, no. So now when I'm just talking good part, so when I'm just talking about a connectivity test, it just simply test. It's not going to link your certificates to anywhere. It just test. Okay, so now let's say in case if you want to just validate your connectivity with a cloud connector based on a location ID, it just sends a request and it tells you that okay, if this is available or not. As simple as that.
Okay.
Oh, okay, cool. So now let's say if I am
Sam,
here on,
just a question, one more question. Like when we are configuring this connectivity test, like in case of external system, can we periodically, like every 15 minutes, half an hour, we can test and do some activity so that the connectivity is alive or not, we can able to come to know, right?
very nice question. I think yeah, that's very practical, but no, currently I don't think so. You can automate this part that after every 15 minutes you will be able to check it. And I
Okay.
doubt in from any integration flow also. I think from integration flow, yeah, might be you can just schedule a request after every 15 minutes. It will ping a request based on a response. You can again, I think you can just build an iFlow. Like while I'm discussing, now let's say if you want to validate a connectivity test, put a timer Okay, put might be a request to that external system, and based on the response, in case if it's HTTPS response, whatever kind of response, based on that might be you can trigger a mail notification to your admin. So this can be done, but not from the connectivity test, but from iFlow, yes, you can build this part out.
Okay, okay, not from the standard. They have
No,
got
no,
this
no.
option. We can, okay.
But guys, how in a standard, so now you have to come manually here and do it. You will not be able to automate it. That's my point.
Okay, got it, Sham.
Perfect. So now let's say for my example, I'm going to use this two email IDs. One is email.test. Let me just put it here. Okay, one is your email.test cpi@gmail.com. Another one is cpi.sam44@gmail.com. So now let's say if I'm just talking about this particular case, so now how I'm going to do the configuration part of it. And I hope we have more and more errors, because if we have errors, we'll be able to understand better. So now let me just click on edit here. First of all, I'll remove this error and to no, let me just okay, just they're just ending only. So let me just take an end message here. Okay, so this is what we have discussed, I think, last time. Um, if someone has missed the session, so now here I have in my exception some process block. So now here I have used from an external call. So this is for calls outside or internal or local call. External call, I have something called send. So just I'll again hover over to the send, because might be someone has missed the session. Send, it says it represents a one-way call to an external system. Okay. So now here, if this is my send, this is my external system. I have connected using a mail adapter. Again, I think very straightforward here. Just connect to the receiver, use your different kind of adapters. So here I'm going to use a mail. Now it's time to configure this mail adapter. Okay. So now what I'm gonna do here is I'm just gonna quickly go on to the connection tab. First of all, it'll ask me the address. Okay. So now I know what is the address. I'm just going to pass smtp dot gmail.com. Okay. So now here again it's internet, start TLS. You can just mark it as optional. Now here it talks about authentication, which says encrypted user password, plain user and password, auth, authentication code, or none. I'm just going to keep it plain user and password. Now you'll see there is something called credential. So now let's say if you're doing some new configuration for the first time, the best part is hover over to it. Okay, it says specify the credential names used authenticate against the server. Okay, so for this particular bit, now we have a concept here into CPI. Okay, so now let's say if you want to connect any kind of a remote system based on basic authentication, where we do provide a username and a password. For that particular thing, what happens is we have to create something called credentials. So credential is like one holder which has my username and my password. So now let's say if I go here into this particular tab, uh, if I go here onto this monitor, now we are going to use something called a security material. So if I click onto the security material, I want to create a credentials to connect it to the remote server or system. So how to do that particular part, I'll just click on create. I'm just going to, we have multiple options here. Use the credentials, authorization code, secure parameter. So we do have a different kind of options. So now let's say again, if I want to create a new one, I can just give any name. I'll say mail connect. This is a name I need to use in my credentials name. And here in a description, I can just pass anything. I'll say mail connect test. Now here I want to provide a username. So now let's say in this particular case, I'm using this email ID. I have to provide a password. Again, I have to repeat the password. I'll deploy this. So you need to deploy this particular part. So once you deploy this, you will refresh and you have one credential. So now when I say credentials, it means a holder which has my username and a password. And I can just quickly give this particular credentials here. Now I think again, someone asked me, Sam, is this a good approach? Is this a bad approach? Having a credentials at one place? So guys, I think it purely depends. I have seen the bad side of it. I have seen a good part of it. The bad part is now if you store a credentials at one place and now let's say if you want to try out the connections, okay, now you don't have to worry about the credentials because I'm sure anyone would have created into the security credentials and you will be able to pick it here. You can quickly go here and see, okay, with what we have done this connection. Now the good part is every time you don't have to key in your username and password, or might be if your colleague or your team member is doing some kind of integration and you might not want to share it, you want to say just use a credential name, so you can use that particular part. So again, there is a plus and minuses both for it. Now again, SAP has given a one more approach where some places, not everywhere, some specific places you can type in your username and a password. Okay, because now SAP has seen this kind of repercussions that if we just give this straightforward this approach, what it can impact. Okay, so I'll just talk about when we are talking about OData adapter also. So now here, this is the connection details I have given. Again, in the processing part, you have to provide the same email ID and a password. So now in this particular case, I'm just going to copy it out. Same where who is going to be my receiver. I have to just pass it out the details also. Okay. Now next, again, subject notification for dump in system for order dollar. So now let's, in case if you want to see for which order in subject only you want to do that particular part, you can do that bit, because we can use a simple language expression in your mail attributes. So now let's say if I want to see at header what is the name or what is the variable in which I have an order number, so which is your here created with an order number in header. I'm just going to quickly go here into the mail adapter. I am going to do header dot again. I think you can just write your story. There is an issue. Again, guys, just play around with it. I'm just trying to make it more logical. In case if you want to use something like your exception dot message, exception dot stack trace was one of the variables which we used for, which is like your simple language expression which is given by standard SAP for your exception handling stuff. Okay, so SAP has given this particular placeholder. We have discussed last time. We have seen how in a stack trace it gives you detailed level of information. So now we have done this particular part. Now your configuration is done. Okay, but SAP has one or two more requirements. And what are those requirements? SAP says if you are using your email IDs, you have to make sure that you have to enable few checks also. Okay, what are those checks? So first of all, you have to make sure your application or your Google account is for less secure apps is turned on. That's the first thing. and second again for your unlock for your capture part. Now again, why this is, you know how Google policy is very strict around the security. So now let's, in case if we are using based on one email account, we are trying to send an email. Now let's say if internally it asks for unlocking capture, which is not possible. So SAP wants that whenever you are using your sender email address, you have to just make sure these two checks are being done. Same for sender, same for the receiver also. So now let's say if I go here quickly, I think one is your test mail. So this is the one. So now here, so let me just quickly go on to these two parts and make sure the setting is enabled. So I think I'm just going to enable for less secure apps. And same way, I'm just going to enable okay, so I have just done this two settings as well. So let me just again now I'm going to use similarly another application here. So again, I think two settings we need to quickly do it out. Mhm. And the last part here is for this capture. Okay, so now I think this is done. Let me just try to log in again one more time. Okay, perfect. Okay, so now I've just done the required setting for this. And now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to send a request and see what kind of error we get and then how we import a certificate and that particular scenario works out overall. So let me just go back here again onto the iFlow. Let me just do a save and let me just deploy it out. So guys, any confusion or might be in case if the step is not clear, might be you haven't understood any previous part, just let me know. By the time it will just deploy, I can just quickly go through the story again.
Yeah, I have one question, Sam. See, where do we
Sure,
get
sure.
those certificates from? You said two certificates are required in order to connect to Gmail.
See, when you're talking about a server-side certificate, so I hope you remember when we just did a connectivity, okay? So server certificates are like a public certificates, okay? So now if you go here, you remember that we just gave option here. Okay, I should have unchecked. So here you will get the certificate chain, server certificate chain. So that's I've
Okay.
downloaded it out. Okay, now I need to see if it's really the one I'm talking about or not.
So download this just and store it in the key store. Is that it?
Yep. That's it. That's it. Because while authenticating, I'm passing my credentials, but we need to have the server-side certificates to be added into our keystones.
Okay. So this is mandatory, right? Once we have done this, you download this onto key store, then only the flow would work successfully.
Correct.
Okay, I got it.
Logically, yes. Now same way with SAP S4 system also. Now let's say in case of any time if I want to connect it to the CPI, I need to make sure that this now in that particular case your cloud integration certificate should be uploaded into your S-Trust.
So I downloaded those, and the names are different than what you are saying.
Now you have downloaded names are different. What do you mean by that particular part?
You said, like you should have two different certificates, right? One is SMTP gmail.com.
Uh-huh.
I have that, and the other one is GTCCA 101 or
101.
101, but I
Uh,
don't see it. I see it GTCCA 1C3 GTC root R1.
let me just check it out. Let me just check it out. Give me a second here.
Okay.
Logically, it just a second. Let me see if it's okay. I think something has gone for toss. Okay, not ours. Okay, I'm really sorry. I forgot that if we have really the exception in that iFlow or not. Let me just quickly go back there. Because without exception, this exception sub process will not get triggered. Let me just quickly check it out here. If we can bring the exception. Okay, sorry, I think it is there. It is there. So I think that's a good part. So we already have no exception here. Now let me just do one thing. Let me submit a request. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to send a request, and there should be logically error into my mail adapter part. So it says there is an internal error occurred. Yes, which should be logically the case. Now let me just quickly go to the monitoring part. Okay, so now you see here, I'm sure I think this happened with me earlier also, that whatever the error you see here, it's not quite, you cannot understand. Okay, but definitely you'll be understand that okay, this is something related to the certification bit. So now if you want to really validate that, okay, if what error I'm talking about is it at really a mail adapter or it's somewhere different? So if you just step inside it, so you will see that this happens onto the mail adapter side only. Okay, so I click on to this particular part. So we now know where the error happened. So now what I need to do is I just need to work with the certificates. Now let me just give me a second here. Let me just go to the downloads. Let me just share it back. Now here, I just need to go to the download part. So here we have the certificate. Now let me just try to extract here only. Okay, so now when I extract, I think I have just got GTS CA1C3, GTS root 1 and smtp.gmail.com. So now what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to get into your tenant. I'm just going to go very specifically to the tenant, this store, and then what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to go on to the key store part. Now I think what I think the beauty here, if you just look at, so now let's in case if you want to add a certificate, once you click on browse, just a second. Sorry, there is. Okay, so now let's say if I want to add, so now let's say if I just want to add smtp.gmail.com. Now let's say if I want to add smtp.gmail.com, I'll just quickly click on add. I'll just click on add. Now you'll see a pop-up. It says entry key store with alias smtp.gmail.com already exists. Yes, I know that that particular entry already exists. I'll just try to search it out here. So now we have this smtp.gmail.com. So I see this is being your valid until is just 21st Feb. So I'm just gonna click on this action. I'm going to click on update and I'm just going to add that particular message again. So I'll just go to this smtp.gmail.com. I'm just going to click on open. I'm going to click on update. Okay. I'll just confirm the path. So this is valid till 12th of May 2022. I think that's okay. Let me just click on confirm. Let me just update it out. That's one part. So now again, I'll just try it same way for the another one also. I'm just gonna add this certificate also. Let me see. Same way, I'm going to add third one also on a safer side. Okay, so I think all the certificates are.
So from where did you downloaded did you download next two certificate?
I think when I downloaded my first file, once I downloaded my first file, it's a GIF file. So I just extracted, so everything got added here.
Okay, thank you.
No issues, no issues. So now let me just quickly go back here. Now I think I added a certificate. Now guys, I'll just tell you one thing. Sometimes it takes time to update it. Might be there are chances, because I think last time this is my experience, that whenever I update, it does not work out that moment only. Might be it gets updated, might be there is some kind of back job behind the schedule, it updates it, not sure. It does not work sometime at that moment only. Okay, because last time it does not work out, we waited, and might be again night after 30-45 minutes tried again, and it started working it out. But this is how you add certificates, update certificates, and you add into a key store. Now let me just monitor, go to this monitoring tab. And once you have redeployed the certificate, so one thing more I want to just stress here. So now if you have deployed it, go to your artifact on a safety side. Just do edit, just make a save and just deploy one more time. Okay. So now this is done. Now let's wait for it to get it deploy, and then we'll just move on to the next part, or testing this part out.
So in real time also, sorry.
That's okay. Please go ahead.
In real time also, these certificates will be only 3 months validity, and we have to update it again and again.
I think it depends on the server where you're connecting it out. Generally, yes. Generally, no. It is not for that kind of a short tenure. So now let's say if I just go to Cloud Key Store, and if I look for your SAP, sorry. Come on, where is the cloud? Where's the DigiCert? So this is again, I think, means now if you just look at for your, I think this is the main. Again, it has a key pair. So if you look at currently, I see for CPI, this Cloud Integration Certificate, this is valid till 25th of May. Oh, yeah. Let me just go inside it. So definitely, guys, it's not for that short duration. So this is definitely taken care by SAP only. I think this was released in 2018. Again, guys, it's not for 3 months. I think I see how much is my experience. I think it is there for 2 years or 3 years. But yeah, this is something which we need to take care of it. Definitely something we need to take care of it. Because whenever your certificates are expiring, you need to make sure that wherever your authentication is based on certificates, yes, you have to take care of it.
Yeah, because this will be an additional maintenance activity, and this is why, yeah.
No, I think it's a fair question. Yes, I think you are right. I think because I think I've used mostly with integrating with SAP based SAP systems only, I think, or any other cloud based applications. So generally it is there for 2-3 years, man. Okay, not like in months for sure.
And maybe as this is the public domain, like they're refreshing the certificates frequently.
Yeah, definitely. You're correct. You're correct. Valid from. Okay, I think this is like one cloud-based application where I'm just trying to see what is certification valid from.
And on top of
Details.
it, we get the notification from vendors to update the certificates whenever they accept certificates. Yeah.
No, perfect.
Yeah,
You're right.
definitely it's a maintenance activity.
Yeah.
And then
Correct.
we'll get for the 1 year. Correct.
Correct. Because I think this is very similar happening it out. Okay. Yeah. Cool. So now let me just do one thing. Let me quickly go on to the monitoring part here. Now let's just try it out. Trace is enabled. Let me just go to monitoring. Let me just try to send a similar request and see how does it work out. So now I have just clicked on refresh. Now if there's an error, okay, perfect. Guys, now you see this has been worked out. Okay, so let me just refresh here. If I go to the artifacts log, I'll go to the trace. Now again, I think it has sent to this mail adapter. I'm sure everyone would be interested. Sam, log into the account and show us if it really worked or not. So I think this is the account we have used for our integrations. Let me just click on next. So now you see here, I have got the notification. So notification for dump and system for order. I'm 100% sure the order number is 10234. Same way, let's say if I just send 7, if I send a request, and if I click on here, so it should be, there should be one more message should be coming out for order number 10237 also. You see? So that's how your admin will get. So now you can just have your proper message here, what you want to fine tune it. And yes, that's how you get details here in your email messages. If you want to add to CC, everything is possible as such. But that's how your mail adapter work out. But I think the important concept is here of the connectivity. Again, I think it's not something rocket science connectivity. You can just test from anywhere, but SAP in Tune only has given you this particular option. Okay.
Yes, Sam, can you please share those URLs where we can enable those in order to,
Everything I'll share. Everything I'll share.
Okay.
Don't worry about that particular part.
Thank
Okay. So guys, this is
I have a
how.
question.
Yeah, please go ahead.
While we configure that mail adapter, can we sender can be like dummy something like dummy sender ID, and a receiver can be some distribution list, like senders like sender can be
Definitely. See, any sender email ID can be configured. Now you're talking about, I think that's the point I was about to come. Now guys, now let's say where is now let's say there are people who what they do is they dynamically pass the email IDs. Okay. So now let's say in case if you want to dynamically enable the stakeholders, you can here also you can have a placeholders. You can even use simple language expression to determine who should be passed here. Okay, so now let's say might be if you have some specific team to look at some issues, runtime you can use some kind of header or property variable to store their ID, and then might be while sending it, you can just runtime determine it here in the system. So all these things can be done.
Sam, here the multiple email IDs also can be given over here, or only single email ID can.
No, multiple email IDs can be given. Multiple email IDs can be given.
Okay, by giving a comma, right?
Yep.
Okay.
So separator would be required for sure. And Lalit, your point is cleared, or you still have
actually, I
any?
mean that actually here, if you see from, actually that is a real ID, like real ID with inbox. Actually, I just mean like something success factor integration team, something like that. Only a test, not the real ID. Not the
Okay, okay, now I get. No. You need a real-time ID as such. You need to have that real-time ID. You need to have a real-time ID.
like we get in success factor also. In like they send the sender is something like success factor admin team, just like that, and they don't
I
have jobs actually.
no. For in this particular case, how much I know because I know in application like C4C success factor, so there is a behind only. There is a mail server, okay? Like do not reply at the rate, and then you give us some kind of a proxy name to it, like C4C admin or C4C success factor. But I think here you need to provide a real-time email ID. First, I thought you were saying dummy@gmail.com if you want to create it.
No,
Sorry,
not
that's
dummy. Only some text, yeah, some meaningful text only, not the ID.
no. You need to create here the Gmail ID as such. You need to create it out.
Okay.
Yep. Sorry, any other part?
Sir, I have a question. Like currently, we are using the SMTP data gmail.com. So generally, in the real time, we are going to use a client provided SMTP server, right? So in that case, actually, you provide. I mean, you mentioned about some URLs which need to be do actually that was you taken from the notepad, right? Some two steps.
The steps.
So yeah, those steps. So how it will be applicable for the client SMTP server? Is this required or not required?
Yeah. Again, guys, I think it's a fair question, but I think it all depends. So now let's say there are some kind of specific setting on a mail server from a company side only, might be Microsoft or might be from Yahoo. Okay, so I think definitely
Actually,
for that particular
mostly
configuration, we need to validate it out.
mostly
Sorry?
we have like mostly we have Outlook. So for that, what is the criteria? What is the checkpoints?
See, again, I haven't integrated with Office 365, but I can just do one thing. I can just check on this particular settings, smtp.office365.com, and then might be I can just try validating that bit.
Because actually in real time in production system, like actually client must be receiving on their Outlook, not on the Gmail.
And guys, I think currently what kind of world we are living, I don't know. I see people, very big companies are moving on to the Gmail-based apps, and personally, I myself love it. It's not that if Gmail is not using. Second point is I can just check it out for mail. If there are any kind of a technical specific settings, I can just validate it out, no issues. Or might be let's just do it now only, then why we need to wait? I think if it needs to be specific, I can go and look at later. I think first thing is I'll always look for help, honestly, because in case if they have anything related to Gmail, so what I can do here is I can go here, I can click on help. Now here, office. No. Okay, so here it says personal account. Microsoft does not support auth prime apps. This is a restriction does not exist for basic authentication. So again, I think they have given some kind of a block. So now again, I think you see how good it is. Now let's in case if you don't have, if you come to this particular page, so might be then they have given you how to connect with the Microsoft 365. This is the first time I am also personally seeing, but now they have given a step-by-step this authentication where based on OAuth code, you will be able to integrate it out.
Please can you send this link in the email?
Yeah, definitely I can do that particular part. No issues.
Yeah, this is useful. Outlook, yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely do that particular part. And I can just do one thing if you want, I can just go through it, and if you have any kind of questions, I can just look at. Guys, honestly, integration is a very, very huge topic. Okay. And I think how much I've started learning new, discussing projects with people, now I see how much less I know. So I just say I just know 1% of integration. Okay. But this for sure, integration has very, very good traction. Anywhere you go these days, any cloud-based, point-based solution, everyone wants to integrate. And that's how you have very good opportunities out to explore in this particular part. Okay, so this is about your how does your mail adapter work. So till now, I think we just talked only few adapters. We talked about mail, HTTPS, SOAP. That's it. Okay. Now let's see going forward what others we look at. Now let me quickly start with a new topic. Let me just quickly open that package here. Okay, so now guys, there was a very important question comes out. I think from the business side, or I think it's a very common requirement that in CPI SAM, if I go to this monitoring tab, if I click on like let's say all, it say there are like 25 messages. Okay, so now here we just have this artifact ID and ID. Now let's say in my tenant, if for a daily, if there are 30,000 message which is processing, which means that might be there are like 30,000 orders, customer number, purchase order, or anything gets created. Now let's say if I have a huge message where there are like different kind of identifiers, how can I search based on that particular part? Okay, because I don't see any kind of specific parameters to see out of the 30,000 message. Now let's say in case if you have enable a payload, logging of payload. Now let's say for 30,000 we have some kind of attachment. Okay, now let's say if I want to search with a specific number, how can I do that particular part? So any one of you thought about it, or like any kind of questions any one of you have it there? Any one of you. Now let's say if I ask you, now in your payload you have some kind of additional identifier, and now you want to search based on that. How can you do that bit here? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Yes,
But I have
yes.
no.
Okay, perfect. No issues. No issues. So guys, what happens is definitely I think this is a very common scenario where we need to search based on different kind of a parameters. Now, I'm not sure how many of you have actually explored it out here. If you just look at here, we have time, status, artifact, and ID. And ID also there are three different parameters which is enabled. Three identifier: message ID, correlation ID, application ID. Again, both are technical only. All three are technical as such. Now, I think the good part is, the beauty is if you just click on this use more field, there are some fields which gets automatically enabled for you. It just talk about sender, it talk about receiver, it talk about custom status, it talk about your application message type, and then we have your custom header, which is like name equals to value here. Okay, so these are some kind of options which gets enabled here. But definitely SAP has also thought about it, that how we can just help you out with this kind of a problem where you want to enable a search based on or how you can search if you have multiple identifiers in your message payload. Now, how to tackle this particular part? Theory, guys, theory and some text screenshots I'll add it later here offline. Search search is based on okay. So now how to take this particular part? Now what SAP says, if you have this kind of things, I'll provide you something standard. So when I say there are standard variables, now here we have standard variables. Don't get confused with simple language expressions. We do have variables for this. Then let me put here. Okay, so what are those variables? So we have close to 5 variables here. So these are like standard reserve keywords. SAP underscore sender, SAP underscore receiver, SAP underscore message type, then we have your SAP underscore application ID. Okay, and then we have your SAP underscore custom message processing custom log custom status. Okay, so these are the different kind of variable SAP has given, and SAP has also told you very clearly where it has to be created. So first initial 4 variable has to be enabled only on headers. And the last one is at a property part. Now again, I think it has defined what type. Okay. So now the beauty here is, now you'll be able to understand these are like constant, Now this is also constant. This one is your X bar. So now let's, in case you want to read anything from the input payload, so you can just do that particular part. Now the beauty here is you can now clearly understand if you use this particular variables and the SAP sender receiver might be hard coded out. I think that will also work out. When I say it will also work out, what does that mean? Now let's, in case if you just now you know which specific iFlow you're working it out. Okay, now let's say who is the sender, who is the receiver. You know in advance when you are building your iFlow, so you can just give this hard coded. Now again for message type also, now let's say if you're using an IDOC, or might be if you're using some kind of a message where you want to have, where you have some kind of a message type, you can actually capture it out. And the last part is your application ID. Now I'm sure everyone, after looking this particular field SAP underscore application ID, you would be able to relate that, yeah, this is the one we have seen on the monitoring part. And I'll say, yes, that's the same one. So now we'll just test this particular part, how this particular feature works out. So now let me just do one thing here. Let me just go to my iFlow, which is your now let me just go to the artifacts. Now again, I think this is a very interesting feature, critical also. I must say, the reason behind is if you have a huge message of if you have your message payload big in size, multiple identifier, and there are like you in a day you see 10,000, 15,000 messages, then I think it will make more sense to you. So now let me just quickly go on to the edit part here. Now here what I'm going to do here is in the first content modifier. Now let me just capture all these details. Okay, there is no harm in using it. SAP sender constant. I'm going to say SOAP tool. Same way. Receiver SAP only just give. Then we have your message type, and you have then test. Then you have your application ID. So now here what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to take this variable SAP underscore application ID, and here I'm just, as this takes an X path, I'm just going to do one thing. I'm just going to give again the source value. So I'm just going to use the same, this order number only, because this is reading from the input XML. I'm just going to maintain the same data type for it. Okay, I think this was interesting. I didn't know that there is a history. I can also see what I did. That's an interesting part. Did anyone notice here? Okay. Now, guys, does anyone has any kind of a question here? Any one of you? It's like what we did.
I have one question, but I will ask later. I think these are standard values, so they have standard output as well, but you have already defined some values here, so.
Guys, that's okay. Yeah, these are standard values, but I think it's important is how do you are going to leverage it out. Okay. So now let's say if I go here, now let's say if you have a huge message and you have already a identifiers given in your iFlow, I think it actually helps. Okay. So that was the first point. Now the second point is the important here is this identifier application ID. SAP has exposed you SAP application ID also. Now in case if you want to search based on that, you can actually do that bit here. So now same what we did here. So now we have saved an SAP application ID or order number also. So now let's see how this will behave. Let me just click on save. Now let me just do a deploy. I'll just undeploy what I don't need. Let's wait for it to get it deployed. Okay, I think this is deployed. Now let me just quickly go here and now let me just click on trace. Let me just go to the monitor message processing here. Now guys, I'm just gonna do one thing. I'm just gonna send an order here with some order number. I'm just going to submit a request. Okay, sorry, I think I haven't given this endpoint. Sorry. Let me just quickly go here. Now let me just again submit a request. I think this is a default route. Now let's say any message comes. If I go to the monitoring part here, now I think I have passed. Now let's say if this is my order gets executed, I'm fine. Now let's say I remove all these filter parameters. Now I'll just do one thing. I'll just click on all. I'll click on all. No, all artifacts. Okay, so now so we have close to 16,000 of messages. Now let's say if this is how it was going on. And luckily I have implemented this feature where my application ID is having that variable. Now what will happen is if I use this order number and I pass here into this ID parameter. So if I just click onto this particular part and search, you will get that specific message. So that's one advantage of using SAP underscore application ID parameter for your monitoring part. Again, I think in a similar fashion, if I just click here, might be you want to just look at uh, sender underscore soap, because I think this is the sender we have given it out. Okay, so if I might be my other messages also, if I have used, that's why it is showing it out. Might be I need to look at same way for my receiver. It is SAP, so only just one message it is showing me out. So now again for custom status also, if I click on this part, I think I have given as such something called worked. Let me just pass that part out. Work. Okay, I think in that custom status you need to just define with this 4 values only. how much I see completed, discarded, failed processing. Then we have your application message type. I think this is test. I think what message segment we have given it out. So now let's in case guys, if you're building 10 or 15 iFlows, now your 10 iFlows might be for different kind of your IDOC might be for soil location, equipments, your material, your orders, your customer application, everything is might be an IDOC and you have a huge message. Now with this kind of identifiers, I think you can just quickly search here. Trust me, if your usage is high, I think monitoring becomes very key capabilities into SAP CPI. And with this kind of feature, it actually helps you a lot. So this is how this works out. Now there's one more thing which I want to talk about here is the custom header. Okay, so if you just look at here, it says name is equals to value. I'm sure you might have seen the first time in a search box, it says name equals to value. Now how this particular part work out. So guys, SAP gives you additional functionality where you should be able to create dynamically custom headers in runtime, and then you should be able to search it out. Now how to do that particular part in CPI? So for this, you need to write some kind of a script, and how to do that particular part. Now let me go on to the script part. But before that, guys, I hope we are clear till this part, what we discussed. Any questions here?
Yes, clear.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now let me just go to the package here. Let me go to our artifact. Post integration flow. Now here, how to do my script part. So I can just do quickly one more thing. Let me just add a script. Now this is connected. Let me just create a new one. Now how to use my method or of creating a dynamic custom header property. Okay, so for that particular part, what we do need to do is, first of all, let's just check if always in like it's like checking in your object if it's set or not. Okay, just check with a message log if there is a message is there or not. So I think for that particular part, what you have to do is just use a def message log. Okay, so here I'm just going to use again the standard your message log factory, and there I'm just going to check it out if the message is there or not. I think that this is going to return me out message log factory dot get message log. I need to pass a message. And in this, I just need to just validate against null statement. If there is a message, then only it should go inside this if statement. It's not equals to null. Now here, first of all, I'm just going to read. Now let's say I have saved my another variable. Now let's say, let me show you one more thing. Now let me just so now let's say I have only a one identifier which I have used for my order number. Now let's say that in variable SAP application ID. So everyone now knows that in my incoming message there are three let's say identifier. Okay, what are those identifier? Now let's say it is order number, IDOC number, segment number, or might be PO number. Let's say there are four values coming, and there are 20 records daily comes. Okay, and I need to validate quickly if it gets failed or not. Or now let's say if someone is saying, oh, my order is not replicated, which is now I want to quickly look into my monitoring point. So one thing is very clear. I can use this order number to validate based on I can just validate based on order number in this variable SAP application ID. But what about other parameters? Now let's say IDOC segment PO. So using an XPath, you will be able to store here into some variable. Now let's say maybe you have stored into some third part one, you have created one more variable and you have stored in that particular part, but still you will not be able to search with that particular part. Now let's in case if we want to make it a search enable, what to do, what we need to do it here. So first now we need to use something called your now we need to add into a search using something called your add custom header property. Okay, so how to do that particular part in system? So let me just first read that particular order number or that particular value. I'm just, for an example, I'm using, I'll use order number. But now let's say if you have any other identifier and you have stored using XPath, then that's it's okay. So now what I'm gonna do here is I'm just quickly going to read that variable def. Now let's say IDOC. I'm going to say message dot your get headers. Get headers dot get. I think this is also one you can write it out. Now I think earlier we used to first get all headers, then we used to use a next statement to get the specific header we want to read it out. But I think in the single statement also you can do that particular part. Now just let's say, because I don't think we have a flexibility right now. We don't have multiple identifier. I can use now let's say order number. Okay, first of all I'll read here into this variable IDOC. Okay, now what I can do is always just make sure that whenever you are using this add custom header property with whatever the value you're setting it out. Now let's say might be if this is a variable, make sure that there is a value in it. Okay, always have this kind of checks enabled. Now let's say here now I think here comes the one line which is I think the most important one. So here what we can do is we can use this message log method add custom header property. So message log dot add custom header property. Okay, and here what you need to do here is let's say any variable name. Let's say PO number, and then here you can just pass this IDOC. Okay, so now this is how I think you will be able to pass it out these details. You should close the statement and then return your message. And then I can just quickly click on OK. Let me just click on save. Any questions here on this particular script part? Anyone?
No.
Perfect.
So some like
Okay,
here
guys.
you are going to search with the PO number, right? In the monitoring.
Okay, yes. So now dynamically I have added a variable called PO number using a method add custom header property. And now might be whatever the value I have passed dynamically in this number, I should be able to search here into my message payload or into my monitoring, but I'll show you how this will work out. Okay, let me just show you how this behaves. Let me just do a save and let me just do this deploy. And now let's look at. So now let's wait for it to get it deployed.
So we can define multiple header
Yep,
properties and we can search with them.
correct. Exactly. You're right. Let's wait for it to get it deployed. I think this is deployed. Let me just quickly go here. Okay. So let me just quickly do one thing. Let me just enable a trace here. Let me just copy this endpoint. Let me just go to the monitoring here. Okay, so now I'm just gonna do one thing. I'm just going to submit a request as a chair. Sorry. Okay, now I think this is the one. Let me just submit a request. Okay, so now what I'm just gonna do here, I'm just going to refresh here the message. So now just look at two things carefully. If I select this particular message, first of all, there will be a custom header get enabled here. Okay, so now let's say if I click on, let me just your number, I have it. Okay, Let me just click on all messages. Now let's say if we have close to if I just look, there are close to 16,196 messages. Now let's say if I have enabled a custom header value, I click on use fields. Now here what I need to do, I need to make sure that I have the field name exact, which is a PO number, then equals to, and the value of order which I'm looking for. Now let's say in this case, is it same to your order number? And I'll click on enter. Sorry. Let me just copy this number. Let me just pass here. Now let me just click on enter. So now you will be able to actually get that particular PO number. Now let's say in your custom header, you have defined multiple parameters. Okay. Now you define parameter for your segment, IDOC, order, any number. Now if you have enabled it here, then I think you will be able to quickly figure that particular part out. So this is one of the advantages of having a custom header property and application ID. So now if someone's tell you that I want to enable my search based on multi-parameter, you say that, yes, I have a way, I can help you out with that particular bit. Yeah, guys, any kind of a question here?
Sam, just question not related to this topic in general, like if SAP CPI is exposing the service, all the message layout and structure, everything can we define in SAP CPI?
No.
It's not possible.
That we used to define in CPI, man. SAP that we used to define in POPI. Okay, we used to create all the structure, everything. CPI is quite flexible, man. CPI is quite flexible. PO was like complex if I look at CPI.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
You
all
have
the
a placeholder. You have a placeholder where you can add your where you can add your message. Okay, mind if it's an XD, XML. So if I go here quickly on the global property of an iFlow, if you go to this resources, here you can just add different kind of schemas. XSD, WSDL, JSON, ADMX. You create an XSD outside and just import it, as simple as that.
Okay, got it. This is also another question what I'm supposed to ask. Okay, good. Okay.
Okay.
And all the conversion after we are importing, all the conversion we can do from source to destination. Destination may be totally different. Example RFC or IDOC or whatever it is. All the conversion or mapping part we can do, right?
See, as I told you, CPI is a payload agnostic. So now let's say if something your receiver is JSON and your process message in XML, before and put a converter, it will convert a message XML to JSON, and then you will be able to push it to the receiver system.
Okay. Any future? Are we planning any kind of scenario, Sam, like one to another converter, and we are going to convert kind of a complex structure or something?
See, I think I have last time I've discussed, I think simple CSV to XML, I think everyone can talk. I have just talked about CSV to XML where I have a header, okay, with like header with, and then like table headers I have, and then I have a values. And that particular, I think I have converted using a script into your XML part. I think that particular scenario is there.
Okay, then I'll go through that video. Yeah.
Correct. Yep, guys. Thank you so much. Just wait. Thank you.
One